Hello my friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Novella. Today is Saturday evening. Normally I don't make videos on a Saturday evening, but hey, it was a beautiful day, so I didn't want to sit inside and we went for a beautiful walk and here we are. Now, I've told you before that I want to talk about women during the First World War. And I did a whole lot of research during my time, especially around Edith Cavell. She was a British nurse that worked in Brussels. She had founded a nursing school, and that was the very first nursing school on the continent. And yeah, she was there. She wasn't actually there when the war broke out, but she came back. She was with her family. And she came back and yeah, she didn't want to pick sides, so she let everybody in her hospital. German soldiers, Belgian soldiers, French soldiers, it didn't matter. And at the beginning, she had a lot of work, but then as the war progressed, she had less and less work because all the sites had their own field hospitals that were relatively well equipped. And the main surgeon of the hospital she worked was already behind the front line in around Ypres and yeah, he had his own hospital there called the L'Océan, and yeah, she was out of work in a way quickly because A, there were no soldier patients anymore, and B, there were no normal patients anymore because yeah, with the war going on, there was no money to go to the hospital, so people stayed at home even if they needed care. So after a while, she meets up with a baroness, the Belgian-French baroness, de Croÿ, and she is a woman of very high standing, and she is setting up an escape route for French, British soldiers that got behind the enemy lines, and through the hospital of Edith Cavell, they could escape to the Netherlands, which wasn't in the war. It was a neutral country, so besides having 1 million Belgians as refugees, they didn't really suffer during the war. Now, this went really well. They could save around 250 soldiers, and they all got back to England. And it's just because they got back to England that was the beginning of her end, because the men were so happy that they got back. They sent her postcards to thank her for her care and for helping them escape. Of course, postcards, that's without envelope, and yeah, everything was under German supervision. So those postcards got read by the Germans, and quickly they figured out that she was one of the main people of the escape route. She also was, and that has long been a discussion, she also was a spy. But not really, she was only at the beginning of her becoming a spy. So what she did, and what a lot of female spies did, was survey the railroads and check what was on the trains. So they counted the ammunition that was on the train, the cannons that were on the train, the forces, the soldiers, how many. So there was all kinds of information that the Allied forces could really use. So she did that. She was betrayed by her own people because of those postcards, and also because of somebody who worked there. And she was in October 1915 arrested, and then quickly after that, after a show trial, she was convicted to death. So she was executed. That was one of the biggest mistakes the Germans could have made, because it started a huge outrage, and people were so angry that they would kill a nurse, a British nurse that even helped the German soldiers, that people didn't understand. And many young men signed up voluntarily after her death. She was buried somewhere, and then after the First World War, somewhere in 1919, they unburied her, and then they reburied her in I think St. Paul's Cathedral. I think it is. I'm not 100% sure. And with a state's honor and a lot of poo-ha. Now, she wasn't the only one who got executed. There's also a Belgian spy, Gabrielle Petit. She was, she had her education, her spy education, her training in England in 1914, 1915, and she was captured in 1916 and also executed. But she was a very good spy, apparently. But also railroads. That was mainly what they did. Then, of course, there are the more cute, the more dangerous spies. Those were the women that worked in, let's say, red velvety establishments like Mata Hari, for instance. Mata Hari was a Dutch girl. I forgot her name. I will put it down below. But Mata Hari is somebody who became so famous. Her name was so, so exotic, and people saw her as something sexy and seductive and dangerous. She was also executed. And then there are women that were more double spies. I had here one. Which one was it? If I can find it quickly. Martha Knockart. She was. That's her. She was this woman was a double spy. And she worked for the Allies, but also for the Germans. So she just worked for the ones that paid the most, I guess. And those were mostly the women that worked in red velvety places. Now, of course, there were the nurses, the spies, but there were also the women that provided shelter for people who were homeless and food for people who were homeless. And of course, there were a lot of women now working in factories, making the bombs and building the ships and airplanes. And that was the very first time that a married woman, could go out to work. And it felt a bit like a liberation for many of those women, empowering also. And it was a very interesting time. It was really the end of a very depressing time for a woman in a way, because the only thing, like when you go back to Edith Cavell, as a woman you had three choices. Either you married and had children, or you stayed unmarried and you became either a nun or a spinster, and you worked for yourself, but you didn't earn much. And then with the rise of professions like nursing and then teaching, they were able to have a sort of a career. But as soon as they got married, it was over and done. Because as soon as you married, your job is over, your career is over. So, yeah, they really had to make choices. And there was no, up until then, there was no possibility of doing both. You couldn't have a career and a family. That was not done. Now, the women were, at the beginning of the First World War, very underestimated by the Germans. So they didn't see a threat in them. So they didn't realize, or they only realized too late, that they could also be spies and people from the resistance, like Gabrielle Petit. She also did acts of resistance. There were also a lot of female smugglers. So, of course, everything was rationized because the Germans took their share of the crops and everything that was made, and that made the prices very high. And of course, there was the Netherlands that was just nearby. So they went to the Netherlands on foot with their big skirts, and under their skirts they had sewn a whole lot of pockets where they could hide their butter and cheese and sausages and everything. And then in 1915, the German soldiers, the German regime decided to put a real fence between Belgium and the Netherlands, and it was with high voltage wire. Now you have to understand, electricity was a very novelty. That was a novelty. For instance, cities had a little bit of electricity, but not much. That wasn't commonplace in normal households. There were already factories working on electricity, but people didn't really know the dangers of electricity. So a lot of people died getting trapped in that wire of death. That's what they called it, de dodendraad, wire of death. But even then they figured out how to get through it, and then after that there was a little minefield, and then go back to Belgium with their goods. So yeah, it was dangerous for them too, and at the beginning less, because the Germans didn't realize that women were capable of doing heroic acts. And there were also a lot of women that were sort of messenger, and they did that by bike or motorcycle. So that happened too. And for instance, Madame de Croÿ, where is she? That's her. Marie de Croÿ. So that's the Baroness I spoke to you earlier. She was amazing. So she had a big chateau, and in the basement she developed a studio to make fake passports and photographs for the passports. So she did that, and she also had a couple of cars, and she used those cars to smuggle people over the border. And because she was a baroness, so she was left alone by the Germans at the beginning. But then they realized that she knows Edith Cavell very well, and she knows Gabrielle Petit very well. So she must have done something wrong, and she was also convicted, but not to death. They sent her to a sort of not a concentration camp, but a prison camp, where she endured very difficult times. She came back very ill. She was released very early because she was, I think she had tuberculosis there. She caught tuberculosis there. And then when the Second World War began, she did exactly the same thing. I think that's very heroic. Now, a woman that is also very, very important during the First World War is somebody who won 2 Nobel Prizes in 2 different categories, and that's the Polish Marie Curie. Of course, the French say she's French, but she's Polish. Marie Curie was the inventor of the X-rays, and she, together with a Belgian doctor, Lepage, who worked closely with Edith Cavell, Marie Curie worked together with Lepage. Lepage was a very, very talented surgeon, and he quickly realized that Marie Curie was brilliant and that her X-rays were an excellent, excellent invention. So what did they do? They created a couple of trucks that were sort of X-ray stations on wheels, so they could drive to the field stations, the field hospitals, and take X-rays of the soldiers that were badly wounded. And yeah, thanks to her, they saved a whole lot of lives and legs and arms, I presume, because not everything was amputated then. And Marie Curie was very, very important. And people don't talk about that, but she really stuck her neck out and went to the trenches and to the very difficult and dangerous places. She was often on the battlefields. But nobody talks about that, and I think that's very sad. So yeah, Marie Curie, Mata Hari, Edith Cavell, Gabrielle Petit, those were all very, very important women. And they should be celebrated each year, I think. They and all the mothers and of those soldiers, they and wives, they made a lot of sacrifices for their husbands, children, and family, and country. Now, if you ask me what can I read, well, there's not much that is good. There's one book by Diana Suhami. It is the best, but not a single name is correct. So when I started first doing research on Edith Cavell, so this is the page. This is the doctor that worked together with Edith Cavell and Marie Curie. He liked working with women. He was very advanced in his for his day, so he really liked the professionalism of the women. And this is Edith Cavell, if you haven't heard of her or seen a picture. Now, this is very readable, but it's not correct, so be careful for that. And yeah, the Flemish part is completely ignored. So the escape route went from France to Brussels, where Edith Cavell was, and then over Flanders to the wire of death, and then to the Netherlands. And apparently, but with all the books, they didn't work together with Flemish people. They completely ignored the Dutch part, the Flemish part of the operation. So yeah, it's a bit of yeah, it's not very good, and not a single name is correct. This one is okay, but it's only in Dutch. It's Evil Edith Cavell, The Bitter Remembrance of the First World War. This is more the political games that were played, because At the time, it wasn't Edward Hoover. It was Hoover who was in Brussels during the First World War. He set up the campaign Brave Little Belgium, or Relief for Belgium, or something like that. And but that was a big scam, like all of his stuff. And Edith Cavell was one of the first to write about that. So the relief fund was, they asked Americans to donate as much as possible, and also grains and food and all canned food and stuff like that for the poor little Belgians. Well, it arrived in Brussels, but it immediately left in the direction of Germany. So, but that is never investigated. That was all covered up. Although it is true. And she was one of the first who talked about that and wrote about it. And because she was also foreign correspondent for a couple of magazines in the UK during the First World War. And she wrote that she saw trains leaving with all the products and the money in the direction of Germany. Herbert Hoover, yeah, he was a bit of a shady figure. He was the representative of the States in Brussels during the First World War. And yeah, he did nothing to prevent Edith Cavell to be executed. Absolutely, absolutely nothing. Officially, they did a lot. They wrote a letter, but it was shady. Also because, I believe, the financial advisor and the president of the treasury in the the financial advisor of the Kaiser in Germany and the president of the treasury in the States were brothers. Yeah. So there were a lot of shady things going on. And I think that's also the reason why they were so reluctant to enter the war. Also because after the sinking of the Lusitania, what's it called, the ship, with a lot of Americans on board, they waited another 2.5 years before they reacted, which is for America very strange, even. And then, yeah, that's that. I also have this one, A Cup of Cold Water, the worst book ever written. Transnational Outrage, Death and Commemoration of Edith Cavell. No. And then I have War Memories by Marie Princesse de Croÿ. But yeah, this is written by her. You can still find it I found it on Amazon. And then Silent in an Evil Time, The Brave War of Edith Cavell by Jack Batten, but also not really using her wit. She wasn't very witty. Determination, that she was, and sheer bravery. But also here, no mentions of the Belgians or the Dutch-speaking Belgians who helped her. I will not show you the pictures of Edith Cavell shot dead. This is a French book about her by Hugh R. Boudin. Although it must have been available in English. Edith Louisa Cavell. I think so. I think I only have the French. I have this one, Women in the War, but it's Dutch. There are English versions too. Yeah, but yeah. The Girl Scouts were also very handy. They also helped a lot.
And then I have a couple of non-fiction books and fiction books that I found on Vinted. I have Michael Palin, you know, the man from Monty Python, and his wonderful travel documentaries, Michael Palin and his great uncle Harry. A Tale of War and Empire. And then I have also the very well-known The Guns of August by Barbara Tuchman. Barbara Tuchman is one of the women that made me like to read history, things about history. I have also Ken Follett's The Titans something. Fall of Giants. And this one for a buck. Memoirs of a Fox Hunting Man by Sigrid Satsun. Beautiful cover, I think. I really think it's beautiful. €1. And I've got Remembrance Trilogy. Yeah, Regeneration Trilogy. I'm sorry. In Dutch, all 3 of them. And then this one by John Harris, Covenant with Death. And this one I found for €1 and is Passionale Operatie Rodemodder. This is a Belgian book that isn't translated. So yeah, that's it. Tomorrow I will do a live. I am on a party, a farewell party. A friend of mine is leaving Belgium. First, she is going to Thailand for 6 months, and then afterwards, she will see where she ends up. So we are going to do a farewell party, and yeah, I only film my videos on the spot. So I think I will do a live. So yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. I hope you liked this one. It's a bit out of the blue, but maybe you'll be interested. Okay, thank you for watching, and I see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.